Okay.
Hey,
There you go.
hey, there we go.
You get it wrong. Not even I thought it was earlier, but
No, it's a modern.
yeah, I know it's weird. There's a lot of confusion. I know people were using like time things last night, but I don't even work until tonight. But I will. Yeah, good. So I that's awesome. 45. No. It was all confusing. I'm used to long for.
Oh, wow. What's the hardest?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? That's so true.
Yeah, that's.
Alaska got to the same color. What's the hardest? Yellowness and Ukraine are also the same. It's like. It's
Oh, yeah, I'll find it.
oh, yeah.
No, right. Yeah, little down. I don't want to put too much pressure. Also, the kind of what happens.
Oh, I was.
Oh, yeah. Day trading is scary. I have a couple of friends back home who are doing that. I don't think it's very profitable. I think they feel like they have a lot of yeah, it's because they watch like the videos on like what a candlestick is. So I feel bad for them, but hopefully they can figure it out, either make a lot of money or just buy stocks and look for them and just let them
Hey, let's get started. So let's dial back to yesterday. We had Linda, we had to rush out of there. I would like to email her with some questions that people had, and we can sort of follow up on that afterwards. Hold on, I'm just gonna compose an email and I'll kind of take notes here. Okay, anybody want to jump in? What questions did you have for her?
I was wondering, I mean, when we were looking at maps of different countries of India or China, it seemed like Japan had made them all. Is that correct? Like there were a lot of Japanese made maps. And I'm just curious as to why maybe Japan at that time was so advanced in map making or had the most famous map kind of thing.
Uh-huh, okay. Other questions?
This might be a little too open-ended for an email, but like I was wondering if she could explain maybe some of like she described the map of India as cosmographic, and I was wondering if she could maybe explain some of like the symbolism or cosmic significance that the map specifically of, I think it was the pilgrimage.
You called it cosmographic?
She called it cosmographic.
Cosmographic,
I think this is the vocabulary.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if she could maybe explain like some of like the cosmic significance of like the features of that map.
Yeah. Okay. Others? Layden, what did you think about it? Be honest.
Thought it was cool. I don't like the maps were very different, especially the ones from China. It was just like a different style. Like maybe what caused them to look different than a lot of the Western maps that we see. They're just like a completely different. Like were those two schools of map making interacting with one another, or were they started to develop separately?
Yeah.
And I think it's funny that the Japanese map of China had a way more fractal cool coast with like many more kind of like islands. It seemed like off the coast. I thought that was kind of funny. Yes.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk about the map making materials that they use compared to like Western maps.
Yeah, Santiago.
Does you have any examples of like an imaginary source of the river prior to the molecules discovering Constellation Lake?
Examples of
The source, like maps
like
that show like
the projected or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did she ever show us like what it looks like that area today? Yeah. Uh, yeah, Michael.
I'm curious about the way maps were used
Uh-huh.
by the ancient Chinese and how that might compare to the way maps were used like in navigation of the around 700
Uh-huh.
in the Middle East. Like how did they view the maps that they were creating and like what they were going to do with them?
Uh-huh. Anything else?
Origins don't. She mentioned a lot though. The yellow tooth.
Yeah, so has it been was that as not good.
I think it's TZE and. Sure.
I don't think
Not related to that, but who did you did the map, your map with the grids on it from the 1100s. Yeah, I was surprised by how geographically accurate that was.
I was surprised that the grids were original. I thought that was like fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna let's see. When is free? You guys have free? Is it free university? When
Yeah.
does that happen at particular times?
It's up to each person. It's so funny.
Every person does it at
It's
their own
unorganized.
time. It's on. Okay. Okay.
It's
Is it popular?
I've never done one.
How many people have done one?
Students sometimes they volunteer to kind of keep like their own.
So not so much.
Some people, I have a friend who did a sparkling water tasting one.
Uh-huh.
It was like a whole class. Like we had Caspi. It was brilliant.
And are the teachers ever not students, or is it all students?
It's always students.
Yeah, for free university.
It's always
I've
students.
never seen a
You get
faculty member be involved.
you get paid like what?
You get
school money to
class.
Yeah, like you get paid, but you can spend money for like.
Yeah, that's what they're right. And you do for the love of the game. It's so much fun. There's nothing to teach.
You can make something up, just see if you get approved out of there.
Yeah, it's your game. Teach your game.
My buddy and I are jugglers, and we taught juggling once upon a time.
Yeah,
And he lives here. Okay.
the guy that went on a trip, right?
Yeah. Wait. From what?
New York.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
You
yes.
was telling me about your juggling days and how you'd go to the city to see famous jugglers.
Yep, yep, we did. We did.
You didn't see how to get there.
I'll see if I can find a picture of the two of us from 40 years ago.
You would like
Oh my gosh.
sparkling water because it's also a juggler.
He's a juggler.
He's an expert juggler and he's also really good at follow. You know, where you put the ball in the sticks.
Yeah,
I forgot. That
yeah.
Yo.
All right, we're gonna get started. That's our list, our playlist here. Actually, I did want to say one other thing. You guys have really done a great job of engaging with all the speakers, both the guest speakers and each other. So I just wanted to note that. Okay, so Tekla, I think you are up. Let me get you. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Hold up. Try it again. Oh, I am fine.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
You good?
Mhm.
Okay.
Uh, Okay, I chose to present this map, which is European Russia, because I actually had a similar map, but this map has more information on it. It's like the same region. I just have this in my dorm. I found this in the antique store, which is in Williamstown. But honestly, I think this one's more interesting because this is more educational. You actually learn so many things from this map. But well, on this map, this is the Soviet Union, and here we have the Russian fighter. So that's a difference. Okay. First thing, well, we read on the legend. So basically, this map was well, like published by geography teacher called Nikolai Nikolaevich Shipov, and it was published in 1908. We also this also tells us information about how many people lived in the Russian Empire and how many people lived in each country. For example, in Russians were like up to 60 million, Ukrainians were 70 million, Belarusians were 6 million, and so on and so on. The map tells us the information about the people. For example, what they wore. Like you can see that for example, in Georgia, they wore those kind of clothing. It also tells us the information about what they worked on, what they harvested. For example, Ukraine is known to is famous for harvesting wheat, so we see a lot of wheat over here. Also on Ukrainian flag, the bottom is yellow and the top is blue, which is the blue is means the sky and yellow means wheat because they have a lot of wheat there. So they tell less information about their agricultural practices. In Georgia, winemaking is really popular and harvest grape, so you can also see that. And also there's information about natural resources and animals. In Finland, they have a lot of deers, so you can see that also on the map. Also, I found this interesting. They had this religious symbol on the map. I did not know why they specifically had it here, but turns out this city is kind of like spirit of Russia. Like it's like a religious center of Russia. So I guess that's why.
Also, the way they present mountains is really interesting because usually it looks more like a smoke than a mountain. So I found that interesting. Also, it tells information about the infrastructure and industrial infrastructure. For example, you can see the symbol, and also like those things tell us what they produce. I believe this means iron, and this means coal, and this is in Ukraine. And also, I found this. I guess the map is damaged, and that's why it has this hole on it. But yeah, it must be because it was damaged. Yeah.
Hit the red X, you want to X out of that. And you hit the grid button
Oh,
on the left, or you can do that.
okay. Mm-hmm.
There's so many cool pictographs and drawings on this map. Do you have a personal favorite?
Well, I don't have bias, but I did really like the way they presented Georgia. Like this, because this is what they actually wear in Georgia. Well, not right now, but in the past.
I have two questions. One, do the pictures represent like spaces on the map? I see all of them are numbered. Is it like supposed to represent something?
Oh, those
Or-
numbers, actually, every number has a description on those sides. So,
Then for the second part, was there anything in Georgia that you wish was there that isn't for one of the pictures?
um, I think it has a lot of things. I don't really know what I would add.
At the front on the same screen, there's the boar, or go back to the word Georgia, the third one. There's the boar, and then in front of his nose, what are those symbols? There's a lot throughout the map. They're like
Wait,
two circles.
Might be cheese.
Look like two cheese wheels. Oh, cheese wheels. I don't know. I don't think so. Like underneath the sheep. In front of the board.
Right above stem.
Up a lot. Like at the top, there's a lot. There's the goose, and it's like red, the goose breast.
Oh, like 285.
Yeah, 280.
Yeah.
I think they would have the information on the sites, but well, I know that in this region they had a lot of cows, so maybe it's cheese making.
Everybody's holding these staffs. Was it like a shepherd thing?
Oh yeah, we did have shepherds.
What was the like point? I know you said it was educational, so was this like a show like instruction like school? Like what was the point of this map?
Oh, I think this map was published for the school where Nikolai Nikolaevich was teaching, because he was a teacher. So I think it's purely for educational purposes.
Do you think there's a reason that even the parts of Centralia that are on the map don't have like the same information, even though they were also part of the empire?
Oh, actually, I do not think about maybe I think this part was not Russia yet, because like this is the Russian Empire. I mean, in Soviet Union, yes, this was part of the Union, but I think during this time, this was not Russia yet. I'm not
It
sure.
also might not be considered European Russia, it might be considered.
Yeah. Oh, that's also right. Yeah.
But I don't know.
This map includes the Caucasus, like part of Europe, because it's European Russia and it shows them. And I just wanted to see like do you agree with that? Like are the Caucasus part of Europe? Because it feels like it's kind of contentious, I feel like, and I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's the question I get asked a lot as Jordan, like, are you Asian or European? But I think Georgia is like in between Europe and Asia. Geographically, you can say that it's Asia because it's under the Caucasus Mountains. But I think culturally it's more European. Yeah, our culture is more similar to European culture than Asian culture. I don't know about Azerbaijan or Armenia.
did you look more specifically into the spiritual center of Russia, just because it is kind of significant as like an icon, and I was wondering maybe for like local claims of like working icons in that city, maybe that would explain why they chose an icon in something way.
When I searched this up, it said that I actually, that is actually so interesting, and I will definitely do more research about this, like why specifically here and what's going on in this city, but I unfortunately don't know much.
Do you know if like the red lines, are those like roads, railways, or are those like maybe like the borders of like the local government?
I think they are borders, because, well, if we take Georgia for example, I like the border is somewhere here, but I think it's more like regional borders, because this is, for example, Western Georgia and this is Eastern Georgia. So I think it's not like borders of the countries, but more like regional borders.
You mentioned like they have the population like the Russians, Ukrainians, but I also saw like the notice that like they refer to as Little Russians or White Russians, the Belarusians. So officially on this map, what are they called? Are they called Ukrainians or are they called Little Russians?
Okay, so I don't know Russian that well, but here it says like Little Russians, and Benny means white. So yeah, that's why it said White Russians. But uh I I don't know if Belarusians are called Russians because they're considered White Russians.
I think it might come from cardinal directions. I think certain cardinal directions were associated with colors. And so I think white maybe is associated with some of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I go. You guys hit the red X in the upper right. Yeah. Full bar is. It's your story. Did you make a story?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
go back to the
my bad.
that, yeah. And then at the top section. Yeah, to the left of that.
Sorry, I thought I set the Zoom, but I guess I didn't.
Well, it'll, you can click it and then it should zoom in. No, click on the,
On the arrow.
on the arrow at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
And then
I was-
you can click there.
So, let me show you the whole map first again. If I can. Sorry, guys.
You go backwards.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do, but I went forwards.
Is there a left arrow that goes backwards on the remote?
Yeah. So I picked this map. It's a Baran. I don't know if you remember, but it's same guy who did like the really picturesque mountain maps that David Rumsey showed us. I really liked it because it was like the most like expert vision map I could find. Like it's literally the Earth if you could see it like underneath the water. The thing that stands out the most is obviously the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which I don't know, I think it's gorgeous. Like the colors he chose, like really dark and gray and dull, really makes it look like abyssal and accessible. I just thought it was beautiful. This is not going in the right order, but whatever. It kind of has the scar-like appearance, which I really like. It looks really stressed, and it looks like the testament to some like really violent geological history. I was surprised by like how cohesive and large of a figure it is. I didn't know this existed. Like this is my first time finding out that the Mid-Atlantic Ridge existed. And it literally is like a scar. Like this thing is the result of the tectonic plates like stretching out so far that like the Earth's blue interior comes up as lava and creates these mountains. So these lateral lines, these kind of scars, which are involved in like carrying a lot of like really cold water east and west. They're called transform lines, and they form because the the vertical segments of like the kind of spine of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, they get pulled aside at different speeds. So they kind of slide past each other. So I'm sorry about the uncohesive motion, but something I thought was interesting was Iceland just kind of being a stamp in the middle of the ridge. It's kind of, I don't understand how that could have happened because the ridge also just continues up right after it. I don't know how that happened, like that it split off from Greenland and kind of just push it aside. Um the Atlantic Ridge like still like receives like geological stress. Like it's kind of it's not really a scar, it's an active fissure more like. So what's up with like what happens to Iceland? Like why is Iceland fine? I don't know. Um the
You wanna escape out of it.
It's okay. I think I kind of understand its logic a little better now. The rivers are really greatly exaggerated, obviously, and gives the continents this really like pilfer appearance. Kind of looks like a post-climate change Earth, maybe. And finally, Greenland is green on this map. And that's it. That's my presentation. Yes.
Do you know around when this map was made and like how they found this data?
So this was made, he made it for National Geographic, I think in the 70s. But I'm not sure. I should know this.
It's up in the corner.
Oh yeah, kind of it's hard to read. Isn't black text over like a
Yeah,
black
the Atlantic
box?
Sea. Let's see.
Oh, wow.
This is a poor
You sure it is?
That's gonna be on.
Eh, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's in the 70s because I read this like Reddit conversation where people were like, oh, at the bottom.
I think we're on the top of back. Like the very bottom of the text, like the top of the text.
I think it is the 70s.
Yeah.
It is probably the 70s. People are talking about how they saw this in school. Apparently, this was like a really widespread map in US schools. You know. I mean, I don't really know if you know this, but like is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge like are the mountains like rising or is it just gonna stay at the same? Because I know you said mountains. I'm wondering if they're just gonna keep rising through the tectonic plates. I actually don't know. It's kind of a weird place because it's like really like it varies very crazily between being like the coldest place in the ocean, the hottest place. Uh, I think it totally depends on like random geological activity that I just don't understand. Whether it's like a volcanic activity basically.
Is it three-dimensional because it has mountains, or is it drawn?
Is it purely decorational? Yeah. Sorry, I don't
Is it
understand.
like 3-dimensional?
Is it a three-dimensional map, or is it based on what materials? Because it has mountains and mountains, like visual.
Like are the visuals made up or not? I don't think they're made up. Sorry, I wish this was fresher in mind, but I looked this up and I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure they use the technology called like echo sounding. So they ship goes over the ocean and sends
sort of. Then it bounces back up.
and it bounces back.
And they use time, they try to see the guys.
David Ramsey's website says that it's like greatly exaggerated, or the AI says it is. But
That it's
I-
exaggerated, that they took some license here.
I looked it up and it does not look exaggerated. It's this big, I think. I'm like at least two-dimensionally, this
Yeah.
is the size of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge,
Yeah.
pretty much. The mountains themselves, they do exist, and this is like the highest point in them. But whether or not they're as tall as like they look, I don't know. Can't say that.
Are you able to zoom out all the way? Does the map include Asia at all or no?
No, he does have a Pacific Ocean version,
Okay.
which is just like this one. Yeah. It's a little less like this one, though what's crazy about it is that it's like it's literally the outline of where these continents separate.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like just literally the exact negative image of the Western world. But with the Pacific one, it's a little messier.
Yeah.
Are you interested in this just because purely like the phenomena of it happening, or is this like maybe something that you want to research further into in like a career?
I don't know if I would make the Mid-Atlantic Ridge my career. I think I just thought it looked crazy. Like I thought it was cool. You know, I had this idea of like I like maps that let you see things that you wouldn't normally see. And it just kind of looks like something out of a world building project, you know, like this looks like mortar, you know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I think it's a great example of estimation and speculation, and how much of it was made up versus really exists. Like you'd have to look at their data to understand how much was actually based on more exactly based on data. All right.
The change.
We just have to change exhibits. It's not a big deal. Hold on a second. And when you're done with your exhibit, you can
I'll switch back to something.
you can, if you want, you can just do this, just click out of it and then go over to the grid. And then you don't have you can do whatever you want if you want to do that. Okay, I'll put you back.
All right. So this map right here is a map from the Teatrum Orbiterarum, which is considered to be one of the world's genuine first global atlases. Go to the title actually. You'll see that it's titled Belgi Veterus Titus. So this, I didn't realize when I actually first selected the map, but only when I zoomed in on it, that this actually isn't a map of Belgium or the Low Countries as it was contemporaneous to the cartographer. This is actually an attempt to represent Belgium as it was in antiquity. So the title of the map is being translated an older map of Belgium from the geographical undertakings of Abraham Portelius, the cartographer. He was a Flemish cartographer, native to the Habsburg Netherlands, born in 1527. Not quite sure when he died or exactly when he finished the first edition of the Theatrum, but this map is actually present, I think, first in the second edition of the Theatrum. And it's actually separated from the main corpus of the work and is annexed to it in a section labeled more or less being translated to like personal projects. And so the main body of the work was, I think, meant for contemporary maps, whereas this was sort of meant to appeal to the academic sensibilities of his audience who would have been interested in antique history. Underneath the title, if I can point, yes, this little block of text here, this is a key of sorts, actually. The Latin is rather stinted, so even with translation tools, I was having a hard time fully understanding it, hence why I didn't include translation. But it's basically telling us how and what these different typefaces indicate on the map generally. And you can see that there's a wide variety of typefaces, which we'll zoom in and you'll get to see the variety there. Here in the second cartouche that I chose to highlight, I didn't bother with the ground text, so it'll be interesting to try to translate that. I wanted to focus on SPQA here, which is interesting because anyone who's like sort of more familiar with the Roman history will know that SPQR is a famous acronym that sort of is representative of the Roman government in general, where SPQR stands for Senatus Populusque Romanum, so the Senate and the people of Rome. Here it seems like they're doing almost a play or a pun, where it's the Senate and the people of Amsterdam, which is an interesting kind of play. It sort of is making us think about like the relationship that the cartographer has to the sort of Renaissance romantic view of the past, especially late Roman antiquity, and especially the period of the late Republic, before Augustus declares himself princeps in essentially emperor. Here underneath we have a little dedication, which I do include a translation for. I believe something along the lines of, wait, sorry, I know where it is. Here it is. Abraham Ortelius, a citizen, freely and deservedly dedicated to antiquity, the homeland he had restored. So it seems here like there's a sort of romanticization of the past and almost a desire to restore the Low Countries in general to a sort of imagined era that is considered to be almost semi-mythic in a way. And I thought that this is a sort of interesting ambition to tie to this map. And I think it gives us an indication of the kind of audience to whom the map was meant to appeal. I think it's a more or less mid to upper class audience who has the money to afford a atlas in this time period, who also would be swept up in the academic trends of the time, which would involve studying the late Republic. Here we have, actually, funnily enough, what seems to be a positive review. I thought this was hilarious that he had someone who gets review this map and leave a rather glowing review, actually, which reads, Ortelius unlocks the monuments of ancient antiquity of the Belgae while he reads ancient histories. Gather the earliest seeds of your native soil, O Belgian, and see for yourself the ancient stock you are newly born. Right? It's very dramatic, and I thought it was quite interesting that he would actually include a positive review in the book itself. You maybe consider this to be advertisement. I'm not sure, maybe when these individuals were considering whether to buy the book, they could flip through and see all of these comments. But as I said, it's a map of antique Belgium. And I was trying to figure out just what year was our cartographer trying to represent, because you can't exactly tell just by looking at the map. It's kind of difficult. There aren't very many clues. And so I was lucky enough while scanning to find a very precise clue. Here we have labeled Labieni Castra, which would be the fortifications of Labienus. Labienus we know to be one of Caesar's more or most competent lieutenants serving under him during the Gallic Wars. And we can guess that this was the setup for the Battle of the Savus River, meaning we can pinpoint this to around 57 BC, which I thought was an incredibly helpful clue included by Ortelius, and it gives us an idea of just precisely how he imagined this map to be consumed. I believe he probably imagined his audience as having opened in front of them a copy of Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic War, while they were able to basically track Caesar's sort of escapades through northern Gaul and picture just the positioning that was happening in the battles it describes. Additionally, what we have are labels of the major tribal groups and their not precise, but their estimated sort of locations. It's quite difficult to come up with exact numbers for these people groups. It was probably in flux. But I thought it was interesting that the Nervii were featured so prominently when other tribal groups like the Advatici were less prominently featured, a more eloquent typeface here. And it might be because the Nervii were portrayed or imagined to have been major instigators of the Belgic alliance against Roman intervention in the region. And additionally, I thought this would be interesting for those of you more interested in geographical features. We have what seems to be a major inaccuracy in the coastline of Belgium, or I'm sorry, the Netherlands, modern day Netherlands. If you're familiar with this coastline, most of this land does not exist. I thought that this was a major geographical inaccuracy. However, I learned that the coastline of the Low Countries specifically has actually been changing over the past millennia or so, in which case this actually might be a more accurate estimation of what the coastline in this area looked like at the time. Additionally, this one might be a little bit harder to see, but here there's a group of small islands that is slightly inaccurate, at least they differ from modern geographical satellite imaging of the region. And additionally, maybe we can just zoom in on some of the text, but you saw there's some less elegant, more elegant, and quite interestingly, if I get out of the presentation, this will be the last thing I point to before taking questions. We will have these very ornate, you can see here, typefaces indicating regions outside of the focus of the map. So we have Britannia Insulae Pars, right? Which I thought was incredibly interesting that he chose such a ornate kind of typeface for these regions. But I think that will be it for my presentation. Yes.
I was really impressed how you pinpointed it at
Say 57 AD?
BC.
BC.
It's in BC.
What sorts of clues do you look for when you're trying to pinpoint?
When I'm trying to pinpoint what I was mostly doing, just in that way, I was mostly trying to look at any features of the map, such as settlements or tribal names that would give me a hint. Unfortunately, these are more enduring features of the geography of the region, so they don't really feature as they aren't very good clues. So I was looking for anything that would give me a smaller range. Settlements are pretty bad at this. Tribal names are also very bad at this unless we have precise locations for them. And I just kind of got lucky while I was scanning. I saw a rather impermanent installation, namely military installations, Roman military installations. Noah.
Do you know who this is? You said it's a Belgium. Do you know who controlled Belgium at the time and
When Ortelius was making the map?
yes, when the map was made, and whether or not that influenced his decision to make a map of the past to try to romanticize it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It being the late 16th century, I would have to imagine it's the Habsburgs. I'm not sure if the houses of the Habsburgs would have split by this point, but it's definitely the Habsburgs who are yet in control, I believe. I don't believe that the well, if anything, what would have influenced him is maybe his participation in local Flemish institutions. I'm assuming that Ortelius himself was middle or upper class, given that he had the leisure and the academic training to produce such a map and the access to materials. I'm guessing that he was involved in local political institutions and was kind of rubbing elbows with these individuals and had a sense that what they were very fascinated in was antique Belgian history and seeking to sort of have a deeper understanding and consciousness of their own past. And so I think that he was catering to an audience that was very interested in sort of the ancient prehistory of the Belgae.
Thank you.
Of course, Matthew.
Are there any regions or areas named here that are like have persisted to modern day? I know because there's a lot of territorial changes or like power changes.
You mentioned that Batavia. Batavia is something that I don't know if it's introduced in contemporary Flemish provincial distinctions nowadays. However, during the Napoleonic Wars, when Napoleon invaded the Low Countries and established a ally sister republic, it was called the Republic of Batavia, specifically in the area that becomes the Netherlands, whereas Belgium at the time was more or less annexed into France. So you do see some influence, especially in the age of revolutions, and the Napoleonic Wars kind of appeals to Greco-Roman notions of maybe like republicanism and so on. So
Thank you.
sorry, Tekla. I realize you guys probably had your hands up as well. Tekla.
Has the Dutch already expanded onto the sea? And is the map accurate? Like I think the English pen is quite narrow.
Yeah, that might be true when it comes to the English channel here. I'm not entirely sure how accurate the distances are going to be here. I did not look into that specifically. But was another interesting question actually that has to do with the water systems that you just raised in my mind is the rivers. I don't know how faithful the rivers would have been because rivers do change over time, especially over hundreds of years. Those are going to change. So the accuracy of the water system specifically is definitely a concern. I would like to look into the English channels though. Yes.
When you're talking about the what's it, Castra,
Lavieni.
yeah, there was one like right north of it.
Oh, was there? Oh, did I not even notice this?
Kikero, yeah.
Oh, wait, where is it? So here's Labieni.
Nervi is right above.
Nervi. Right above the Nervi. Oh yeah, Ciceronis Castra. So Ciceronis was a brother or relative somehow of Cicero, actually, who was also a lieutenant of Caesar. He was actually taken captive by the Nervii or besieged by the Nervii at some point, which was a major disaster for Caesar, which is why I think they had to take the engagement. Good eye. I had not noticed that one.
Who were the Nervi?
Nervii were one of the Belgic tribes. They were considered a rather politically important one because they were considered key instigators of the Belgic Confederation that was seeking to expel Caesar and his armies from Gaul. Essentially, Caesar began intervening in Gaul under certain pretexts, and when they noticed that they were setting up more permanent installations, the local political authorities, kind of indigenous to the countries, became anxious. And so they tried to establish a confederation to essentially resist and expel the Romans. Nervii were key among them, but they had other allies such as the Atrebates and the Aduati and Athletici and others. I'm not familiar with the details of precisely which tribes were part of it, but the Nervii were considered instigators. Okay.
What is? I guess I'm kind of confused as to like what exactly the narrative is because this is for Belgians to know the history, right?
I imagine so. I imagine it's catering to middle class and upper class Belgians and Flemish individuals.
So there's a romanticization of like Rome with the what is it, SPQA, but at the same time,
The
like,
Romans were the ones invaded. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. It seems very incoherent to me in a way. I'm not entirely sure.
there's the pre-Belgic tribes that are at war with the Romans, but we're also glorifying the Romans. So I'm really confused as to whose side we're supposed to be on, or like who, like what type of narrative is being constructed of Belgian.
No, I think that's definitely a good question. And I'm actually not entirely certain myself that it's a coherent one. I think it's one that kind of romanticizes the sort of like Republican institutions of Rome while seeking to sort of like legitimate a sort of idea of a Belgic past that maybe wasn't like exactly there. It's very interesting. I'm not sure if it's coherent. Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, the Gauls were Celtic, right?
Yes. And so did the Belgae, I think.
They were?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So like they were just bordering like with
Because you
the
can see
Germanic tribes
Celte.
east.
Yeah, I think the Germans would be more or less east of this river, more or less.
And then do you know if like the modern day Flemish and Dutch, because they speak a Germanic language, are they Germanic and like things changed after?
I'm assuming so, yeah. I mean, you had like a lot of migrations, right, into especially Gaul, right? I mean, the Franks were all Germanic, right? So I'm assuming that many Germans also entered these countries. Raphael?
More than we'll.
Yes.
I'm not really sure if you like know this, but I found it interesting that it's like Belgian. This was made in the 1500s, right?
Yeah.
And it's to like a Belgian audience, and I don't know if this is true, but I hear like a lot like, oh, Belgium's not a real.
Yeah, not a real nation,
So
not
is
a
this-
nation at least.
So does this imply like even back then that there was a Belgian like national identity
Well,
or something like that?
I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to give credence or they're trying to form a sort of coherent national identity. I think that's what they're trying to form. Whether or not, I mean, like, this is sort of like nation building in a sense, almost, or like the idea of like creating a nation with like using a shared past, imagined or real, right? And I think that's kind of what's going on here. I think I've taken up too much time.
That's great. Thank you. Ortelius was a very successful map maker.
Yes.
He was a rich man. He was also persecuted and put in jail because he was not. I mean, he lived through the Inquisition, and
Oh, was he part of like the thinking movement or whatever?
yeah. But he made it out. Okay, Michael. No, not you.
Lost probably again.
Oh, the one without the name. Here we go. This guy. Also,
The Drew Michael theme, will this be a Pittsburgh?
yeah.
Yes, it is.
Steal elements of this presentation.
Was there ever any questions? So this is a map of Pittsburgh where, if you didn't know, I am from, in 1891. So the first thing I'm going to point to is the label. Now I put that dot there for a reason. That's because we'll notice Pittsburgh ends here. Pittsburgh has an H today. So I looked a little bit into this. I already knew about that because it's kind of like a funny thing. At like our amusement park, it's old enough that the label on the sign doesn't have an H. But when the city was founded, there wasn't a standard. So some different like businesses would put an H, some wouldn't. But then in 1891, the federal government decided to standardize all of the city names in the entire country. So any burg became BURG, which is the year this map was made.
Became BURG.
BURG, yeah. So like all federal buildings. Now that being said, like some private things like the Pittsburgh Stock Exchange and the Pittsburgh Gazette didn't change and kept the H. But in 1911, a senator led a movement to restore the H, and the H was restored. And now we're like very proud of the H because there's not many birds birds in the world. And it comes from Forbes, who was Scottish, so like Edinburgh. There you go. This is, I set up here, would be surprising to any Pittsburgher who is not familiar with the city's history, because you'll see here, where's the laser?
It's like the
It's the
little.
little arrow.
This thing?
Yeah.
So you'll see here, Allegheny. This was a separate city from Pittsburgh up until 1907. Today we call it the North Side because it's north of the rivers. But at that time, it was Allegheny City. And actually, one of my ancestors on my dad's side immigrated here, but it wasn't Pittsburgh. And I think he left before it became Pittsburgh. And that was kind of controversial, but now people in Pittsburgh don't even know that it was ever. I wanted to draw your attention to the legend. It's very descriptive. So I was remembering the maps of Williamstown that we looked at yesterday had really extensive legends just like this. And a lot of the places are gone, but this place, East Liberty Presbyterian Church, and there's a few more too, is still there. So I apologize for the maps quality, but that dot is East Liberty Presbyterian Church where my sister plays a job. And I've been there. It's a great spot. It's a beautiful church. Here, I thought was a great place to highlight the city limits. So the dashed lines up here, there's a little bit of a legend you cannot tell. But there's railroads are the solid black lines. Trolley cars are dashed, and not included is these dot dash lines, which indicate city limits, and the yellow is the city, white is not. The city limits have greatly changed. So like Pittsburgh annexed Allegheny City, these have expanded too, but it's less famous because Allegheny City was bigger. And now Knoxville and Mount Oliver are both neighborhoods of Pittsburgh. But in this map, they're not on it. And by that same token, like Pittsburgh now extends a little bit further this way, this way, this way. It doesn't really go much further this way, but the west and south it has. This is the Strip District. So I don't know if any of you have heard of Strip District. If you've been to Pittsburgh, you've probably visited it. It's the most famous neighborhood for foreigners, like people who don't live there. And it's called that because it's shaped like a strip. This is a Strip District, not for any other reason. So these railroads come through. So I think this is the one that I was familiar with. This one that comes like along the river, but there's a ton here. And for like context, this is like a hill. So like you can see like it's much more thinly packed here. So I think the railroad came like up right along the hill and supplied the city or supplied the neighborhood. And there were tons of markets. So people would come here to buy all sorts of things straight off of the railroad. And now the railroads are gone because they're not really needed anymore. But the shops that popped up are still there. And now there's a ton of Steelers merchandise. So if you want Steelers merchandise, this is where you go. Speaking of the hill, Millwood and Springfield, I've never heard of. Bloomfield, yes. You can look that. Bloomfield, yes. East Liberty, absolutely. That's right by where I live. Mifflin, sure. These two, but Springfield and Millwood, I've never heard of. So my guess is that what is now called the Hill District, you can see like Horn Hill Reservoir. Again, it's really bad quality. It's way better on Rumsey's website. That's where I found it. That's what it's called now. And my guess is, I did a little bit of research. In 1890, which was the year before this map was made, Pittsburgh had a 7% black population. Today it's 25%. This is the most famous black neighborhood in Pittsburgh. So I'm guessing the identity of the neighborhood changed a lot between like 1890 and like 1930. And I'm speculating that maybe the naming of the neighborhoods changed along with it. This is Squirrel Hill, which is probably the most like populated, interesting neighborhood in the city. And you would have no idea looking at this map. So I think this changed a lot too. It's not even labeled as a neighborhood here. Now, very interestingly to me, all of the street names are the same. So Forbes Avenue, which is covered up by a dot, that kind of sucks. Murray Avenue is right here. Bartlett, my dad lived on Bartlett. It was still called Bartlett. Beacon, Forward Avenue. All these streets are still there. But my friend, so this is Shady Avenue. I think it's still called that. I can't really tell. This is Shady Avenue. My friend lives on Beacon Street across Shady. So these streets actually didn't extend up into what is like a pretty hilly neighborhood. They did exist, they just didn't cover the same range that they do now, which is cool. This is Shenley Park. So if any of you guys know Carnegie Mellon University, which is like easily the most interesting university, well, it's the most like prestigious university in Pittsburgh. It's named after Andrew Carnegie, and this map is from 1891. So Carnegie Mellon has all these signs up on campus, 125 years anniversary. It was founded in 1900. So the campus didn't exist at all yet. So this is just Shenley Park and Forbes Avenue. And like this is like the main area of campus, and it's just nothing. Not interesting at all. Which is interesting. I spend a lot of time there. Now here's another very interesting thing. This street, which is like a very important one. My friend who goes there lives up here. On this map is called Barton. So all the other streets have the same, Fifth Avenue, Forbes, Elmer, Ellsworth, Bidwell. This is Wallingford. My high school is right here on Morewood Avenue. So I don't know why that street changed either, but it was called Barton here. And it's a very important street. Like Forbes, Fifth, Baum Boulevard, Center Avenue are all like really massive streets as far as like the eastern part of Pittsburgh. So this is a pretty important street, and they changed the name for whatever reason. This one is obviously like I said a lot about it. So Hers Island is the way it's called here. I actually asked my mom about this because my mom, her second career was as a genealogist, and she actually talked to Tom before the class about maps. So genealogy, for those of you who don't know, is family history, study of family history. So she did her own family history, my dad's family history, and then she did other people's family history. They would pay her, and she would do it. So she knows like the neighborhoods, and especially the historic neighborhoods of Pittsburgh really well. So I asked her like what was going on here with Harris Island, because I know this island to be called Washington's Landing. And she told me that Harris Island during like the Pittsburgh steel mill days, which was a city with a pretty different identity than we have now, was a slaughterhouse. So anyone who would pass by would say that it absolutely stunk. That the island was disgusting. No one wanted to be around it. So then when the slaughterhouse closed, the city was like, we're trying to sell this land and no one wants it. It had terrible connotations to it. So what they did was they rebranded the island as Washington's Landing. And now it's beautiful. The reason for that is awesome. So in December 1753, George Washington was about to start the French and Indian War himself. So he was traveling north with his interpreter, Christopher Gist, in December. And they were trying to cross the Allegheny River. And it was almost completely frozen. They expected it to be, I think they expected it not to be very frozen at all. They tried to cross it, and they were using hatchets to break the ice. And it said in like the Wikipedia or whatever, it like took them all day. But at one point, Washington fell in the river in December in 1753. And he would have died in minutes, but Christopher Gist, his interpreter, pulled him out. They made it to this island where, guess what? Washington landed. And they stayed there for the night before continuing north to start the war by interfering with the French, which is really cool. Like, that's a super fun story. And now there's my mom's crew house. I know you guys do crew. My mom did crew for her company, but it's up here. And there's a restaurant down here. And houses in between. And finally, the most important part of the city, where I live. So this is my neighborhood. It's called Highland Park. You can see Highland Avenue right here. It's actually spelled differently now. We have a GH after the HI, but it was named after a guy named like Hilland, and it was Hiland. We call it Highland. Very similar to my school. Callow Hill Street, same. Bryant Street, same. Hampton Street. McCully? I don't live on McCully. This is where I live. It's called Wellesley Avenue. And my mom knows the story of this place as well. The guy who built my house, which was actually in construction in 1891, his daughter went to Wellesley, and he petitioned the city to rename His street, Wellesley Avenue. So my address is Wellesley Avenue. Here's McCullough Street. The same thing with Jackson and all that. So this is some cool stuff. These streets also do extend further north. So right here on Highland Avenue, there's like a hit. So they made a grid over here and then some sporadic streets over here. Grafton Street's still there, but Stewart Street is not. And Wellesley does extend, Jackson Street does extend, Hampton does extend all the way up to top of that. And last but not least, up here is this street, Cromwell Street, is gone. So Bunker Hill Street extends down this way. This is the park. And it gets down to the zoo. The Pittsburgh Zoo is right over here. And this street's gone. It's been consumed by the park.
All right. So in the interest of time here, just a couple questions, where we need to keep moving. Go ahead.
As far as like the nature and parks and everything, I know you pointed out the one kind of by Carnegie Mellon, but I know you're saying like, oh, streets have been added here and there, but have the kind of nature throughout the city changed from like your knowledge?
So easily the biggest distinction is Frick Park,
Mhm.
which is like right here. It's not on this map. So Shenley Park is there, Highland Park is there. This is a cemetery, that's a cemetery. But Frick Park is like the biggest park in the city and it's not on the map yet.
Okay.
So I think in that way it's been extended, but my guess is like, yeah, like the zoo is probably the streets.
Mhm.
And now it's a zoo. And probably same thing places up here.
Where were the steel mills and what are those neighborhoods
Yes.
today?
So the steel mills, the most famous one is Homestead.
Oh,
What were you saying?
well, it's US Steel.
Oh yeah. Homestead is like the neighborhood, which is like right here. So most of them weren't in the city. Like you'd live in here, especially like in Bloomfield. So there's these things called Pittsburgh potties, where people would be so gross after coming home from work, they would open these doors that would go straight into the basement, clean up in the basement, and then go upstairs. So there's still those same doors and toilets in the basement in Pittsburgh houses. And my house has a door, but it doesn't have a toilet. Got removed. So yeah, Homestead's right here. That's the most famous one. Like it extends all the way up here. I think there were probably some up here on the north side of the river too, but the most famous one's on the south.
So I don't know like very much about Pittsburgh history, but like I see it on the junction of two rivers,
Yes.
and like obviously steel was really important, but was there other things like why
So, yeah,
it became such a big city?
Okay. So it got founded in like right before 1753 by the French, right here, called Fort Duquesne, because this is the Ohio River. So the Allegheny River and Monongahela come to form the Ohio, which you guys all know. It's a pretty important river. So this was like a strategic place. They lost it during the French and Indian War, so it was renamed Fort Pitt, hence the name. And after that, it was probably just like a little town until the like post-Civil War, like industrialization. Andrew Carnegie Hall, like yeah, he was like here. He moved here as an immigrant, founded his business here. He grew his business here before moving to New York City. Yeah, I mean the growth was pretty contingent on the steel, which came from two reasons. First, the rivers were good for transporting material, and second, Western Pennsylvania has a lot of coal. So that was really important, and making steel was just a really good location for doing so. And then after the steel mills closed, the city has luckily made a transition. So a lot of Rust Belt cities have collapsed almost. My dad's from Erie. He doesn't live there anymore because Erie's just not doing great. He moved to Pittsburgh. Or Detroit, you can think of too. But Pittsburgh has kind of pivoted to like healthcare and other stuff. So
Okay, we'll do one more. For speakers in the waiting room. Hold on, I'm just gonna.
Okay.
So I had a sort of similar idea to the last map. I'm from Boston, so I thought it'd be interesting to look at a map of Boston. Also because Boston as a city has changed a lot. This map's from 1838. And if you know what the city looks like nowadays, it's completely different. And they've added a lot of land. There's like a fun fact, there's 10 times more land area in the city now than there was in like 1700 when it was founded. So even this map is like they've filled in a lot of land up until this point. Yeah. So one major area of landfilling is Back Bay. So that dot's pretty much where my house was, where I grew up. And as you can see, there's no land there when this is formed. There was this sort of road / bridge that came across, and this whole area in the back was a mud flat, which stank all the time. And you couldn't build anything on it. So that was one of the first areas that they filled in. And then another area of a lot of change is over here. This entire area is now Boston Logan Airport, where before there was nothing there. One area that stayed the same is the Boston Commons. This is sort of the big park in the middle of the city. It used to be on the shoreline. And then this whole area, which they added a little bit more, is now the Boston Public Garden. But used to be like a coastfront type thing, and now it's like surrounded by a bunch of massive buildings. And then you can sort of see the contrast between, this is some area that was filled in earlier. The peninsula used to be really, really narrow, just like in here, and this is all landfill. But because it was built so much later, they were able to organize the streets, so it was done in a really nice grid pattern. And that's true of Back Bay as well. So if, like most of Back Bay is a similar layout to that. Whereas yeah, downtown's totally disorganized. This is the old state house. Technically, it's not the first state house for Massachusetts. There is another one further east in the city, but that's where the state house is nowadays as well, with a big gold dome on top. And then this is Faneuil Hall. This is also unchanged. This is the old marketplace for Boston, and you can see right on the water. And that's also where there were a lot of meetings that sort of helped start the American Revolution. Some of the earliest protests, that's still there. It's more of a tourist attraction now, but you can go and get food, or there is still a market. This island doesn't exist anymore either. This was part of the airport like land reclamation. But there's some like old myths about the island. There was a bunch of pirates who were buried here. There was supposedly some buried treasure here. And then at one point, when there was like a revolt against some captains of ships, like they hung all of the people who rose up, and they put them on this island so that every ship coming in and out of Boston Harbor like had a lesson, like don't attack your captain. This was sort of cool. This is Fort Warren. So now it's just a tourist attraction, but in 1838, this was just like they were just starting to build it. But this was sort of the main military base defending Boston Harbor up until after World War II. You can go and see it now. And it was decommissioned after World War I, and they took it back online for World War II, and it's where they kept a bunch of prisoners during the Civil War. And then lastly, this is the old Charlestown State Prison, which has also been fully buried because there is now a massive highway which goes through here. This is no longer water. This area is also no longer water. But I think it's just interesting how much the city's changed in the last 200 years. Yeah.
I'm just curious. I don't know, like, I don't know if you know specifics, but I guess maybe just from hearing about news, did the like so much landfill causing the formation of the city, has there been any like building structural issues in recent years, or like any problems necessarily that the city's faced when building or expanding because of like all that fake land, I guess?
I think there have, and I know that like, especially Back Bay where I live, is like really susceptible if there's any like sea level rise, they're sort of be screwed. Like, you know, if you walk along, there's like a parkway down here, and it's basically at sea level. So yeah, I mean, I assume there have been. I've heard about that.
Is Back Bay still called that? Like,
Yeah, it's called Back Bay because this was the Back Bay, so now it's the Back Bay neighborhood.
mentioned a lot about Philly. So like on this original map, like how much of the water is still there in like modern Boston?
This is not water, this is not water, no, this is not water, and then like a massive circle here is the airport. So a lot of it's not water, but yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming you just put like concrete. How do you fill land?
I don't know if you know where Needham is, it's like a little bit further west, there's some hills, there's a bunch of like gravel deposits there, so they took a bunch of gravel and sand and basically just shipped it in on trains and dumped it in the water, and eventually they got land.
Obviously, at the time, like Harvard would have existed. Was there anything kind of in the neighborhood of like Kendall, MIT, in between Boston and Harvard University?
I'm not totally sure. I think like Boston, the city, sort of stopped here. I mean, Harvard would be up here in Cambridge, sort of, in MIT as well. So it's across the river. But yeah. Yeah.
Who was Boston defending from?
Well, Civil War was there defending against the South. Like in what?
I guess in
era?
like yeah, when for Warren was a military fort.
I mean, I don't think like Boston was never really attacked. Like it was
Yeah.
17.
well, yeah, but that, like this was only built in 1840. So
Yeah.
Like the Germans were sending ships off the coast of North America during World War I and World War II.
Right.
it was more just like it's an important city. Like they needed a military base there.
If you zoom in on point 8, I remember it said something about at low tide, dry at low water. Is that what those ripple lines were supposed to represent, like a mud flat more?
Oh, I actually did not thought that's probably true. Yeah, that might be. Yeah, because this whole area is tidal, especially in the Charles. So yeah, that might be true. I think that's high tide, and then all this is low tide.
All right, thank you. Awesome. So our speaker is Yossef Rapoport, and he wrote this. I'm going to pass this around. You can look at it while he's talking. I think this course is mostly Western math. We have one speaker of Asian and then another one about Islamic. Islamic maps are really important. I think I've shared with you guys that time diagram which talks about the fall of the Roman Empire and the Islamic Golden Age, which was like 500 years from 750 to 1250. A woman who is a map maker, I was just on the internet a few days ago, and she shared with me. So she's a map maker, and she's based in Egypt. And she made a map. I would encourage you to go to the playground and check it out, about the Abbasid Caliphate at the time of Harun al-Rashid, 800. This is sort of the height of the Islamic Golden Age. And it's a modern day map, but it's really cool for understanding Islamic history. So I would highly encourage you to take a look at this. Plus, on the most important maps document, we have several maps, Islamic maps. They're very different. Okay, so I'm going to let these folks in. Hold on. Oh, good. He's back. Hello, Lance. Nice to see you.
Hey, finally got the app updated so I can talk.
Awesome. Yossef, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, yes.
Thank you. Welcome to our classroom. Lance is a classmate from Williams, and Gordon's a classmate from business school at Stanford. And then I'm going to get a camera going here for you, Yossef, so you can see into the room. There's 50 minutes here. So if you give me just a second, I'm going to introduce you, and then I'll pass it over to you. We've got 40 minutes or so in total. To the top of the hour. So give me just a second, and I will do a little introduction. Hold on a second. Okay, share my screen. There you are. Okay, hold on just a second. Okay, we are really honored to have Yossef Rapoport with us today from London. He is a historian of the social, cultural, and legal aspects of life in the Islamic Arabic-speaking Middle East in its Middle Ages from about 1000 to 1500 AD. He was trained at the universities of Tel Aviv, Princeton, and Oxford before joining Queen Mary in 2008 as a professor of Islamic history. He's been involved in the study of Islamic maps since 2002. And we have a copy of your book floating around here. When he joined the Bodleian Project, led by Professor Emil Savage Smith, who's from Wisconsin, or at least he went to Wisconsin, deciphering a newly discovered Fatimid era cosmographical treatise, and has co-published with Emil the Lost Maps of the Caliphs and Islamic Maps. And with that, Yossef, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to pass it off to you and let you share your screen.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. I'll just what happens? Yeah, I want to start it. Yeah. So, thank you very much for this introduction, Tom, and for inviting me. I understand that you have not. Can you hear me all right? First of all?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, very good. So, I don't know how much you've discussed Arabic and Islamic maps before. So, I'm going to look at three examples, actually not including this Fatimid cosmography that you just mentioned, because it's a bit more complicated, but I'll be happy to answer questions about it shortly. So this is the most famous Islamic map. You've seen it on the cover of my book, as well as in numerous media and museums and merchandise. As you must have heard from Tom and others, any map is a combination of science and art and politics and trade, and in a way, it's an insight to a worldview of a society. The first maps made by Muslims or made in an Islamic context were made in the 800s, as far as we know, or this is the earliest evidence of maps that we have, meaning 200 years after the appearance of Islam in the Arabian Peninsula. And they were made in the center of the largest Islamic empire of the time, the Abbasid Empire. And since then, we have a long tradition of pre-modern maps, which does share some key features despite of its variety. And perhaps the most distinctive feature of the maps that have survived is that they are not standalone. They are always included in books. So they are part of manuscripts. We don't have surviving maps that were hung on the wall, let's say, of a palace, as we have in the European context. So I'm going to talk in the 20 minutes, in the next 20 minutes, very relatively quickly, about three key map makers, each having their own approach to map making. All Muslims, all writing in Arabic. And of course, there were maps made in Iran and the Eastern Islamic world in Persian, but I'm not going to cover that today. So the first one is Al-Khwarizmi. Khwarizmi, you've heard of him before. He is famously the originator of the science of algebra, named after his book Al-Jabr wal-Muqabala. The name algorithm, the term algorithm is derived from the name of Khwarizmi. So he is quite famous in other ways. And he was also interested in calendars and in mapping space. He was part of the court of the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad, the center of Islamic civilization at the time. And his interest in in mapping space included composing a book of geographical coordinates of places. So the map I'm showing here and is part of this, what is actually a mathematical treatise, or a treatise of mathematical geography, which is effectively a list of coordinates. So let me show you, first of all, on the left-hand side, what a table like that looked like. The columns say first from the right, Arabic is written from right to left. So first on the right is a name of, in this case, a mountain. Then the table has columns for latitude. And, so in fact, because these are mountains, there's a longitude and latitude for end and start point of each mountain. So they are not one point on the map, but rather they extend over the map. These numbers are expressed by Abjad numerals, by letters, and then we have further information on the colors supposedly of these mountains, probably on the map from which he was copying from. So he had some kind of a mathematical or some kind of a map from which he was copying, which has not survived. Looking at the map that has survived from the same treatise. So in the same treatise, as you've seen in the previous slide, we have the map, and this is the earliest map that has survived from the Islamic world. The copy that we have was made in 1037, so 200 years after the death of Al-Khwarizmi, and it's in a manuscript in Strasbourg. That's what I put Strasbourg there. This is a map of the Nile. As many Islamic maps, and almost all world map, it is oriented to the south. All right, so you have the Mediterranean at the bottom of the map, and the sources of the Nile identified as the mountain of the moon, following a Greek tradition of identifying the sources of the source of the Nile as a mountain of the moon in Central Africa. And then we have a very stylized system of rivers and lakes that lead to the Nile, and then we have also the kind of a Blue Nile, a branch of the Nile, not a branch actually, a branch of the Nile coming from Ethiopia, as it is the Blue Nile. There is a mathematical element here. We have the equator, the lines, the red lines that you see signify the equator at the top. So south is at the top, the equator is near the top, and then there's a line for the first climb, a line for the second climb, and a line for the third line, and for the third climb. Climb is following a Greek division and following Ptolemy of Greek division of latitudes. So there is an element of mathematical geography here, but he's clearly not trying to, in this map, he's not trying to plot places on the map by coordinates, by latitude and longitude, even though the information is available to him. The whole point of the treatise is this coordinate, but he's not employing that on the map. And this is, I would say, one big feature of Islamic cartography, is that even though we have from the very beginnings of Islamic science tradition of latitude and longitude based on all sorts of measurements which are not necessarily very exact, they are not being plotted on maps, or at least not enough so that we have any surviving map that is clearly being plotted until the 15th century. And the reasons for that are interesting, but I would say primarily because it's not very useful for most people who were using maps to think in that way, apart from the fact that the measurements, especially of longitude, were very inaccurate. So this is what we have from Al-Khwarizmi. He has another 3 maps in the same treatise, which are very abstract and just show how maps should be drawn and do not describe specific places. The next map maker I'm going to talk about is called El-Istahri from the city of Istakhr in Iran. And he lives a century later. He dies probably around 960. By this time, the Abbasid Empire still exists, but the political power has actually been diffused to several local dynasties, whether in Egypt or in North Africa or indeed in the Eastern Islamic world. And Istahri is not a court historian, unlike Al-Khwarizmi. He's not working at the court. He's a freelance geographer, traveling mainly in the Eastern Islamic world, which he knows better. And he produces what we call today, it's not the name that he gave it, an Atlas of Islam. He produces a book that is mostly text, which has a description in text and in maps of 21 regions of the Islamic world. And he adds a world map at the beginning. So I first want to look at the regions. So I'm going to start with the region close to my heart, the region of Syria, Palestine. And this is a map, the map that is included in the chapter of the area of Sham or Syria, Palestine. And the map kind of is part of the book. You see, the copy is from the end of the 13th century in the Bodleian Library. What do we see here? Again, south is at the top. So if you remember roughly the geography of Palestine, you can see that if you put south at the top, you have the Mediterranean on your right, on the right hand of the map, and the labels along the coast of the Mediterranean refer to cities that are on the coast. Gaza is actually not on the coast, so it is the first station on this red line that cuts through Palestine, goes through from the corner of the Mediterranean, goes through Gaza, then the city of Ramla, not far from Jerusalem, and then Tiberias next to the Sea of Galilee or Lake Tiberias, and ends in Damascus. This is the end, the circle at the end of that line. I can actually show, I guess, this is the line. Jerusalem, Nablus, and the city of Hebron, or the city of El Khalil in Arabic, are shown in the central part of Palestine. So this is the top of the map, and then we have descriptions of places and roads. So the road from Damascus to Aleppo is also shown here. And you have the Euphrates here. Why does the map look like that? It doesn't have a scale, obviously, neither did Al-Khwarizmi map, but there is no attempt to show mathematical geography. What we have here is a very abstract and geometric map with lines for itineraries. So we know how to get from Gaza to Ramle to Tiberias to Damascus. Of course, the road was not straight, but neither are the actual routes of tube lines in London. the famous tube map in London, is full of straight lines. Well, the actual course of the trains, of course, is not. And the logic, as Emily Saville-Smith, my colleague, has shown in her brilliant article on this, the logic is similar. If when you're underground, it doesn't matter how exactly the road is. You want to know how to get from one place to another, given that you are underground. The same for people who are going from one place, planning a long journey, such as especially merchants. They don't have GPS, they don't have even compasses at this time. What they need to know is to be able to plan a journey from one place to another, not just in text, but in a visual way, like a tube map, to try to make an abstract map of how to get from one place to another, and not just in a linear way. So rather than saying your itinerary is Gaza, Ramla, Tiberias, Damascus, but also showing you that Gaza is also next to Hebron and next to Ascalon, let's say, on the other side. And also remember, this is a manuscript culture. So if El-Stachri wants his maps to be copied, he needs to make maps that are easily copied. So they're simple circles and squares or similar simple forms, arches, straight lines are much easier to copy in a manuscript culture. This is the region of the Arabian Peninsula, and Mecca and then Medina south of it are indicated, and so are the pilgrimages route to Mecca. But however, Mecca is not the center of the world. It's not like Jerusalem in medieval European maps. And this is part of a political reality where there is no one center of the Islamic world. Al-Istahri describes 21 regions of the Islamic world, including the Arabian Peninsula, which is in fact is the first in the list because of the importance of Mecca, but each of them is otherwise given equal value. It is not based on Baghdad as the political center of an empire. It is rather.
Excuse me, Yossef, we have a question.
Yes, please.
Is there a specific reason that all these maps have south at the top?
That's the most common question. Thank you so much. This is what the big questions are, I would say, in Islamic historiography. We have no explanation by Arabic author or Muslim authors of why they did that. A common explanation, which I think is partly true, is that most Muslims live north of Mecca. And since the direction of prayer, this is several times a day, is towards Mecca, they needed to know, of course, the direction to Mecca from where they were. And in the first centuries of Islam, before compass was introduced in the 13th century, these directions were based on the stars and were not very accurate. So most people simply, let's say in Syria, in Iraq, Palestine, Anatolia, Egypt, simply prayed to the south. Mm-hmm. So in a way that it was a normal to think of, okay, we look south. But we don't have any direct evidence that this is the case. And as I say, Mecca is not the center of these maps. There is a separate genre of maps that gives you the direction from Mecca from different places in the world, but these are generally circular maps. So they have Mecca at the center, and they are not oriented into a particular direction generally. So I think this is the reason. Perhaps another reason that was often given is the importance of Egypt, where the Nile is coming from the south. But I think probably the direction of prayer as a kind of defining feature of the societies in which that map-making tradition emerged, that where Mecca was the south, seems to me a logical reason, but it is speculative. I hope this answered.
Thank you.
We had a comment, Lance just wrote, it sounds like a similar reason that we have the marker on the top of prayer carpets.
And what does the marker look like?
Lance, jump in. Can you unmute yourself?
It's different on different carpets, but I've seen that the carpets are all oriented right in the direction of prayer toward, the east or toward Mecca, but there's always a symbol right at the top in the middle
Okay.
of those carpets. And so I was thinking it sounds very similar to that.
I actually didn't know about. I must admit my ignorance. I haven't thought of that. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Thank you, very much, for that.
Yossef?
Yeah.
Isn't there a kind of map? Is it called a Qibla map?
Yeah.
It's a map that is pointed towards Mecca.
Yeah. So it's not exactly. So it's not, in a way, it's not pointed towards Mecca, because Mecca is in these maps. Mecca is at the center, and it's really not a map in the sense that this is really a diagram. So it simply, in its most common form, Mecca is at the center, and you have a disc around it, or a circle, and you have names of places around the circles. The circle, and it basically tells you, if you are in Cairo, you need to pray in a direction of 200, let's say in this case 120 degrees. This is the direction. If you are in Cordoba, you need to pray in more like 90 degrees. If you are in a place south, let's say in Aden, in Yemen, you need to pray north. So the names of the places are written all equidistant from Mecca. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not. It's really just it's a diagram just of the directions from different places towards Mecca, and Mecca is at the center.
Thank you.
And this really developed only. This format really developed once the compass was introduced in the 13th century, when you have more accurate readings. Before that, the Qibla maps are very, very rough, and have usually just 4 directions or so. Thank you. I'll just I want to talk about the world map of HIST23D. Again, south is at the top. So what you have at the top is Africa, and you see the Nile there. If there is a center to this map, it is probably around Baghdad, but it's not marked. What you see here is actually, you don't see any names of individual localities or cities. What you have is names of regions. So the region of Syria, the region of Egypt, and so forth, and they are in these abstract boxes, and this allows the user of the Atlas of Islam by HIST23D to kind of place. He has in front of him the map of Syria that you've just seen, or the map of Arabia that you've just seen, the Arabian Peninsula, and he can slot, the reader can, or he or she can slot the region into the world map. Where is this region compared to other regions of the world? And I want just to emphasize, perhaps that wasn't clear, that he only gives maps or discussions in chapters of areas which are part of the Islamic world, where Muslims are in control. He knows there are other areas, but he wants to give a map of what has become a world of Islam, a cultural, legal world in which there are different political actors, but trade and Islamic law are shared. And Arabic is a lingua franca, And this seems to be particularly useful for merchants. Europe, as you can see, is the small triangle at the bottom right, just here. So this is your Spain. And here it says francs, so not very accurate. This is the most successful type of medieval Islamic map. It was copied into many in many copies, and actually also translated into Persian up to the 18th, 19th century, despite the simplicity and inaccuracy. Finally, El-Idrisi is the most famous and the most sophisticated medieval Islamic map maker who actually lived under a Christian rule in the island of Sicily, in Palermo, in the 12th century. And so Sicily was under Islamic rule until it was conquered around the same time England was conquered by the Romans. Arabic culture continued under the Norman kings of Sicily for another century, and El-Idrisi, who probably grew up in Sicily, was asked by the king, King Roger, to make a world map on a silver disc. Sicily was not such an important kingdom, but Roger had some kind of ambitions, and he wanted a silver disc for display purposes. We don't have this silver disc, and the speculation is that this world map, which is preserved here in a 16th century copy, is a paper kind of tracing of that silver disc, or maybe a different method. What you see here, and here is another copy, less nice, but here I have all the labels. You do see here, first of all, lines of climbs, as you had in Istach. So this is definitely influenced by mathematical geography. And you have a line, this is the equator, and this is the first climb, second, and so forth. You have the mountain of the moon, south is at the top as usual. And then here again on this world map, you don't have cities, you just have areas or regions. And the Indian and Africa extends, as you've seen, this is common. Africa extends to much east than it actually does. And here you have and we will see it in a minute, you have much better information about Europe. It is not as abstract as before, and generally the lines are curved, not like early Stachri. And you have some places which are more or less mythical. The barrier built by Alexander the Great against Gog and Magog, as well as Angleterre somewhere in the dark north. In fact, the biggest achievement is not this world map, but El-Idrisi produced, apparently on his own initiative, a book divided into 70 chapters, again like Issachar, text and map, but the chapters are not divided by regions such as Syria, Arabian Peninsula, but are divided by a mathematical grid. It divides the known world, meaning the world north of the equator and south of 66 degrees north, into a grid of 7 bands of latitude. And then it divides each of these 7 bands of latitude into 10 areas of longitude. So you have overall 70 square, all equally sized, and then each chapter has a description of that square, as well as a map, textual and a map of that. No, he didn't compile them together. They're not like that in the book that he produced. This is a 20th century compilation of the different squares that are found in copies of Elisach's book. It is by far the most sophisticated map-making experiment in medieval history, because it combines so well mathematical geography with what is actually um, being known, produced by various traditions, mainly the Islamic one, but also a lot of information about Europe coming from diplomats and merchants as well. So this is a square. This is the square for Sicily. So if you look at the island of Sicily here, this is the square that originally in a different copy. And you can see here how accurate, in a way, Sicily here is. Indeed, looks like a triangle, very detailed information. This is where it's from. But other islands, like the big one here is Sardinia, they are not to scale, but there's an attempt to show distances as well. And also a lot of attention to the aesthetics of these. The waves of the sea are very memorable, or the volcano in the volcano island here. This is Stromboli. I forgot the name of this. The modern name here. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I know that island. Yeah.
yeah. I forgot it. So this is Stromboli. I forgot the name of the island here that next to it, which is the island of the volcano. To finish off, I would like to emphasize that this is not a very efficient form of map making, because each square shows just the area of the square, not a continuous political or geographical unit. And this is especially clear in the maps of the north, such as in the seventh climb. So the seventh climb is meaning the climb that is the northernmost climb, the one at the bottom of the map. I can just so this is the area here. So I think this the map. This is the map here. This is the seventh climb. So begins here, 1, 2, and so forth, 7. And this is the second section. This is the first section. This is the second section. So this is the second section, and this shows north of England, including Rapoport, which is Oxford, this island of Inglaterra, and this is Scotland, and this is Raslanda, which could be Eastland or Iceland, or could be something else. We're not sure. But you see, most of the map is wasted on sea and empty places. This is not the case in the map of the second section of the sixth climb, showing southern England and France, where we have many places that was quite well known to him, and we have Ibris and Lontos on both sides. So I'll stop here. And shall I leave the maps some way, or I'll stop sharing?
Yeah, why don't you? Yes, first of all, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.
So yeah, let's leave the maps up. Questions, Matthew?
Hi there. Thanks again for the presentation. I had written down here that like earlier in the class, we'd briefly learned about the impact that the Islamic Golden Age had on like European map making for navigation, and the influence on whether it was like copying or records that they had, and how that almost like helped navigational maps later. If I'm saying that correctly, like would you be able to elaborate on the like technologies that were present in the Islamic Golden Age that maybe helped that process happen, and why they were so advanced and like that helped Europe in that way?
Yeah. This is a big debate in cartography. I would say I'm working here in London with a historian of European map called Alfred Hyatt, and he published a comparative volume. And I would say the biggest influence came through these maps of Idrisi, which were known in Europe and definitely influenced some of the ways in which, let's say, the Nile was represented, the northern parts of Europe were represented, China. So these specific traditions of depicting certain places. In general, algebra and ideas like that definitely influenced in time. They were influenced European map making when it adopted this approach. And coming back to Ptolemy, they probably had some knowledge of what was done in the Islamic world. But I think perhaps disappointingly, our conclusions were that the influence is not massive. So even Ptolemy probably came from Byzantium and was the main influence on the interest in Ptolemy. And in terms of navigation, the compass maps, so the portolan maps that really show the huge advantage, that make a huge difference in terms of navigation, of course, show the Mediterranean much more accurately, which emerged in 13th, 14th century Europe. They did emerge in Europe first, and we have found no evidence that they came from the Islamic world. It was the Islamic world that very quickly in the 14th century adopted this type of maps. And they, I believe, others do not agree, but I believe they must be connected to the use of the compass of on board ships in the 13th century, which again started in Genoa or Barcelona, not in the Islamic world. So, despite my interest in Islamic maps, my own research shared with others is that this has not actually been tremendously important for the development of Islamic cartography, of European cartography. The maps of existing were the ones that were best known.
Thank you. Do we have other questions? Yeah, Dylan.
You were mentioning with the map of Shams that these maps were used for navigation or planning traveling. Were they meant to be used in conjunction with inquiries by locals to get a more precise bearing? Because I know we're saying that they weren't drawn with accurate scaling, maybe, or without accurate proportions between the locations. So did you need also local information to use them more efficiently?
Did you get that, or do you want me to repeat?
No, I didn't get the beginning. Which maps are you talking about, Dylan?
The travel maps, the maps that were used for traveling, and was it the intent of the map maker that the traveler would supplement their knowledge from the map with asking people on the ground questions?
Yeah. So I just want to say that the term navigation we usually use for water, sea travel. So just to maybe just a way of a manner of just clarifying of precision. So what's interesting about the map of HIST23D that it doesn't give any itineraries by sea; they're only by land, which is distinctive. So he's not thinking like a sea traveler. We have in the treaties that there are a few maps that think more like from the perspective of the sea traveler, but they're very rare. In fact, in this Fatimid cosmography that I work with, Emily Saville Smith. Yes, the other thing here is that you can see that you don't have really a tradition of making city maps as well. So if you come to a city, the assumption is that you'll ask around. We don't have really, we have very few urban plans, for example. So it's all both getting into a city that you had to ask, as well, of course. We don't know what people carried on the way. A book like that might be a bit expensive to carry on your way. So presumably it would be easy to copy for your own use an abstract copy of this map if you want to travel from Egypt to Syria, and it gives you the general outline, and then you make some notes and ask people around. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
We have a question from Michael.
I'm wondering if the tradition of Islamic pilgrimages to Mecca had any influence in making map makers more interested in making maps that would show them how to do that, or did that not really have a role, and like it was more of a academic curiosity that drove the map makers to make the maps?
Did you hear
That's
that?
yeah, that's a brilliant question. So this is a map that does show the roads to Mecca. So the red line are roads, and it shows pilgrimage routes from the main pilgrimage routes as you approach the Arabian Peninsula. But I wouldn't say they are very different from the lines on this map of Palestine and Syria, or the many lines that you have in Central Asia. So I don't think for the Istahri tradition, that is the most, as I said, the most popular one, it's not very formative. It's not a key aspect of it's just like another major route. And definitely El Idrisi, as you've seen, has nothing special about Mecca, and he doesn't think in terms of roads in such a way. I would like to add again that since sea travel is not shown here, many of the actual travel to, when people actually travel to the Arabian Peninsula, they often travel, let's say, from Suez or from Egypt, they travel by boat towards the coast of the western coast of the Arabian Peninsula. The same, of course, for monsoon coming from India, so that would land in Aden, let's say. So this is not shown on these maps at all.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. But Yossef, thank you very much again for speaking with
Thank
us.
you.
Really appreciate it. We've got your book circulating around here. Maybe we'll sell a couple more copies. Anyway, thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Lance, for this carpet.
Thank you, Yossef. Thank you, Tom, and everybody.
Thank you,
again.
Gordon.
Really
Cheers.
appreciate the
Cheers. Thank you, Tom. Bye bye.